Welcome to my YouTube channel where we talk about movies. So, if you love horror movies, this one is definitely going to creep you out. Exhuma. This one is a Korean movie, just 2024 movie. So, it starts with witch and a wizard who are invited by a very rich man to come and find out what was wrong with his baby who had been crying non-stop. The doctors couldn't find anything wrong with the baby, but the baby kept on crying. So these two were invited to the hospital to perform whatever magic they were supposed to perform. So they perform their magic and then they go to meet the baby's father. And that is when they tell him that they suspect that it's something spiritual, specifically the man's great grandfather spirit was the one causing the baby to cry. The baby's daddy, please let's not forget that these are Korean names, so I'm struggling to pronounce most of them. So the baby's father was actually told them that it started when his younger brother died. That was when the baby started crying. And then they told him that they can only help him if they get additional hands or additional help from their friends. So these additional men come in the form of morticians. There are two morticians whose job is to dig up graves and then find spiritual reasons why whoever it is they dug up is actually worrying the family. So we are shown a glimpse of their work where another family contacted these two morticians to find out why their grandmother's spirit was appearing to their children, and then they are able to actually solve that situation. So it turned out that the grandmother's dentures were missing. Apparently, one of the kids had stolen the dentures of the old woman before she was buried just to keep her close. And then wherever it is she found her spirit, she says she was hungry. Without the dentures, she couldn't eat. That was why she was haunting the children. Then we have seen what they can do. So they take us back to their normal life where the witch and the wizard approaches them about the rich man's baby. So they explain the situation to the two morticians, and as usual, the money was appealing or the pay was appealing, so they quickly agreed. Now back at the rich man's home, we realized that the rich man's mother was actually not happy with the idea of digging up their great grandfather's grave, which they say was 100 years old. And this old man too, he's very significant because he's also the baby's father's father, but he's currently sick and he's in a wheelchair, and it looks like he can't even talk. Now, the woman was or his mom was trying to convince him not to push on with digging up the grave of their 100-year-old great grandfather. But the baby's cry had gotten so bad that the man was so desperate, he decided he's not going to listen to his mom. So the next day, he goes to meet with the mortician. So the eldest among the two morticians, we find out that his daughter is getting married, so he's in need of cash. He goes to meet the rich man, and then they have a conversation where he's asking standard questions about the grave and all that comes. But the rich man is quite tight-lipped about a lot of things. So the eldest mortician just decides that let him at least go and survey the site of the grave first before they know the next step. So they go to the site. The witch, the wizard, the two morticians, plus the rich man. So as they were on their way to the site, the two morticians got talking, and then the eldest one who had a conversation with the rich man was complaining to the somehow young one about the fact that the rich man specifically said when they dig up the grave, they shouldn't open the caskets. They should just cremate everything. And then it sounded suspicious. And then both of them started having an easy feeling. And then this feeling didn't leave them even after they reached the site because the site looked worse. The site looked so ominous. They were it's like it was far from civilizations. You can't see houses around. So the eldest one already wasn't feeling what was going on. but they just decided to push on and actually see the graveyard. And they will even see, I don't know, I think the Korean tradition, if you see a fox lurking near the graveside, it's a bad omen. They push on and then they go to the graveside. And then the graveside was, it was very simple and airy, like everything around it was, it just gave weird. So the eldest mortician then asked the rich man, why is the grave so simple if they are so rich? And then the man or the baby's daddy explains that initially they used to have grave robbers. And so in order to throw these robbers off, they decided not to spend a lot of money on the graves. That is how simple. That is why it's simple. So after the man looked around, he decided, nah, he's not taking this job. After refusing the job, he quickly leaves the area, but his colleagues follow him, trying to ask him why he's refusing the job when it pays a lot. And then he tells them the graveside is it feels very off, and they too had witnessed the foxes, meaning that there's a bad omen around that area. That grave alone is telling him that if they dig it up, they will face a lot of misfortunes. That is why he's refusing the deal. So then they go back into the city where the eldest mortician is having a conversation with the rich man. And then he's insisting to the rich man that the rich man is keeping something away. Like there should be an information. The grave does not add up. But the rich man is insisting that he has no idea if there's something in addition, he has no idea basically. But he's pleading with them, they should still help him and save his baby. So as the rich man keeps on pleading, the witch feels pity for him and then brings up a ritual. Said the ritual is the evil replacing ritual. So in that one, they have to get five dead pigs and then five men who were born in the year of the pig. And then they went back to the graveside and started the whole ritual. These pigs were marked. These men were also marked, and it was quite scary. I heard when you look at the real movie, they had to do a lot of research because they were scared they would end up conjuring something. It was very scary. So they go through the ritual, and the more they were doing the ritual, then the men will now start digging. They will start digging the grave. The five men successfully dig the grave, and then the coffin is taken. It is loaded into the trunk, and then they're about to go and cremate the coffin. But one out of the five men go back to, I don't know, is it dress the grave or whatever, and then he sees a snake. The snake looked so weird, but he decides to use a shovel to analyze the snake, and immediately something or the snake screams like a woman. You can see that on the head of the snake was like a human being. The snake screamed, and then this scream pierces all over, and all of a sudden the clouds darken and it starts raining. Now, due to the rain, it's said that in Korea it's a bad omen to cremate or bury when it is raining. So they had to go back and inform the old man, sorry, the rich man, that they cannot bury or else they can't cremate the coffin, or else the dead person will not go to a good place. They then decided to take the body to the morgue with a clear instruction that nobody should open the coffin. Now, the eldest mortician was so uneasy. He looked around the area, went to a particular old man to ask him more questions about the grave on top of the hill. He first asked of a monk who the rich man had spoken about. The old man had no idea about the monk. But when he mentioned the grave on top of the mountain, the old man said years ago the grave was said to be buried with treasures. So there was a lot of grave robbers that had come around that area just to steal from that particular, that eventually most of the men got missing or they ran away. We didn't know what exactly happened to them, but they left behind the tools or the equipment they used to dig the grave. And then he goes ahead to show the mortician these equipment. Patient know that surprisingly the grave was never robbed even till date. Now back at the morgue, it seemed that the owner of the morgue had become greedy and saw how nice the grave looked and decided that he would actually loot from the grave. He was opening the grave. So he was about opening the grave when the witch and the wizard came there, but it was already too late. He had opened a little bit of the coffin. So something immediately came out, something spiritual just came out of the coffin and hit the witch, so she fainted and she had to be rushed into the hospital. She was bleeding from her nose. She called the others to come around. So the two morticians also came. And then she spoke about the fact that the man had betrayed them and had slightly opened the coffin, and something evil was let out of the coffin. Now back at the rich man's house, his father that was I earlier on said he'll play a role. His father was sitting by the window, and then he hears a voice, and then he says he calls the person his father, and then the voice is telling him to open the door. It's feeling very cold and hungry. So he opens the window, and then something comes in, and before he realized, that thing has was complaining, saying that he was calling for their help and they never helped him. So he's coming back for his revenge. And then he analyzed both the man and then um, his wife. So that is the rich man's mother. So the mother and the father is unalived by that particular entity. The rich lets them know that the grandfather's spirit that had come out from the grave was a very vengeful one and would unalive all the family members. So the witch, the younger mortician, and then the wizard decide to perform another ritual, which was aimed at talking to that particular spirit. While the eldest mortician decides to go and quickly find the rich man to prevent he too's death. So they do the ritual and they actually get the spirit to possess the body of the wizard. But I feel like the spirit was just, will I say, taking their attention or wasting time, because at the end of the day, it still went ahead to go and meet the rich man, and then was able to trick him into also opening the window. And the moment he opened the window, the entity also possessed his body, and the eldest mortician came into the hotel room to save him, but it was already too late. The entity had unalived him. So they were now worried that if they don't end up cremating the box, more calamity will fall and other family members too will equally be unalived. So they decided to quickly call the family members to give permission for them to cremate the coffin. Mind you, it was still the same day and it's still raining. But as the situation had gone too far, they didn't want to risk even leaving and waiting for the rain to stop before. And coincidentally, the spirit of the great grandfather had gone after the baby to unalive the baby. And then at the last minute they give the consent, and then the box is cremated. The moment the box is cremated, the spirit leaves, so that baby is saved. Now you think the movie ends there, but you're wrong. The movie continues. So the one of the diggers, or specifically the one that had unalived that particular snake I said had a woman's head, was now having nightmares, visions. His eyes was bleeding, where he couldn't sleep well, and that the snake, after unaliving the snake, he has never been the same. So the eldest mortician was sent to go and check on him and find out what exactly is wrong with him. So he reveals to the mortician the snake, that particular snake, and the mortician decides that he'll go back to the graveside and investigate and see what exactly this man is talking about. So he gets to digging again. The mortician gets to digging, and there he actually sees the snake, and the snake is actually looking weird. But that's not what caught his attention. What caught his attention was that he found another coffin in that particular grave. So it seemed that the grave was a stacked grave, two coffins buried there. And what was more weird about that particular coffin was that it was buried upright instead of He then calls the rest of the three, the witch, the wizard, and then his other colleague, to come and witness exactly what he was also seeing. So together they help him dig out the grave. And then one thing stood out. The grave was heavily will I say wired. It was wired shut, and then it was huge. For a normal human coffin, the grave was bigger. They decided that they cannot leave it there, but it was getting dark, so they would try and send it back to the city, contact the rich man's family to find out if they knew about the stacked grave. So on their way, the eldest mortician remembered the old man he had previously asked the questions about the grave. He gave him the insights about the grave robbers. So he goes to that particular man's place, and then they beg to sleep for the night while they contact the family. So the old man agrees, they stay, and then they decide to take the coffin into the barn. But they decide to sprinkle around it with rice and also blood, just to prevent whatever thing is in it from coming out. Actually got in touch with the elders of the family, and then she tells them she had no idea the grave was a stacked grave, and why would they bury the great grandfather in such an inhumane manner. But she has given them all the permission to do whatever it is they will do to the coffin. She has no idea who it is, and she doesn't want to know. So she leaves them, and then all of them collaboratively agree that the coffin should be burned, but they will do it in the morning. So they go to sleep. Now, while they were sleeping, the old man, the owner of the whole estate, hears some noise and goes out. And the next thing we know, the wizard was sleeping, and then he sees a vision of the old man, the owner of the barn, standing on him spiritually, or standing on him spiritually, bloodied mess. And then the thing he keeps on repeating all over again is, his liver is missing, his liver is missing. So it makes the wizard, will I say, frightened. The man quickly rushes to go and see what is happening in the barn. He saw that the barn was still locked. He was hearing the pigs, another side of the house. There were pigs there. He decided to go and check on the pigs, and that is where he finds he sees something unalive, the owner of the house there. So he gets scared and he goes and calls the witch. They open the barn and they realize that the coffin is open. So they both realized that their mistake was that the coffin was supposed to be left upside, the same way it was buried, not put the normal way that you bury a coffin. That was why the thing was actually able to come out. So the wizard tells the witch that he believes that that particular thing has unalived the owner of the home there. So the witch immediately tells him to go and wake the others up. So she remains in the barn there, and then the particular thing was coming back. She was holding is a helmet, so it was coming back for that particular helmet. So she got scared, and then she decided to be smart. She pretended she quickly pretended to be the entity's subordinate, and then the entity started speaking to her, and that was when it sounded like some warlike era that that particular entity was from, and then its main aim was to unalive humans. So she kept on engaging with the entity until it realized that she's actually human. So it comes after her, but luckily for her, the wizard actually comes to her rescues and tries stabbing that particular entity. But unfortunately for him, whatever he even used to stab the entity didn't penetrate through. And so the entity grabbed him and started talking and talking about how he loves liver, and then hurts the guy. But he didn't take away the liver, but he hurt him badly. He fell down, he was heavily bleeding, and then the entity was going after the lady. That is the witch. But luckily for her, she was able to crawl, and she reached a particular part which looked like it's a sacred ground of the house. And that was what made that particular entity pause. And then it started chanting, chanting. And then we saw that the whole body of the entity was engulfed in fire. Right at that moment, the old man or the two morticians finally arrived, and now they were seeing exactly what was happening. And it's like they were all frozen there, turned into a ball of fire, and now started circling the atmosphere. And it's like it had entranced all of them because they couldn't stop or they couldn't look away from the ball of it. Continued circling the atmosphere for a while and finally disappeared. So the witch quickly runs to the wizard. She's calling for help, and it's like both of the two men are still rooted in place, looking up at the atmosphere where the thing had left. And then by morning, they were all traumatized. They had to be rushed to the hospital, both the morticians, the witch, and the wizard. By morning, everybody was rushed to the hospital because the two morticians were mentally unstable. The wizard was badly hurt, and then the witch too was there to see that he would get better. They were in the hospital. He was fighting for his life, and then the eldest mortician decides to go back to the graveside and see there might be something they missed. Before he goes back to the graveside, he decides to make a stop back at the house there, and then he found these pictures and took the digging weapons. Before deciding to go to the graveside, he decided to go back to the house where all these troubles had just happened, and there he picks the he's able to piece in the information between the grave diggers that the old man had told him about, and then their weapons. And then he finds out that there's a particular weapon there that was buried with that particular thing, and I think they were calling it an elf. And that is the thing, if they are able to pull that blade out of the grave site, then they will be able to defeat that particular thing. So he quickly he quickly goes back to talk with his colleagues. Now the lady too has realized that apart from the fact that the thing had hurt the wizard, it had also possessed his body. So she uses her sisters to be able to will I say save the wizard. So they were to stay in the hospital while the other mortician, and then the eldest mortician was to go back to the gravesite. Now this time they decided that they are going to lure the creature out because he realizes that the creature actually has gone back and is staying in the grave. So they'll lure the creature out so that the two morticians will get the chance to dig and find that particular metal, take it out, and everything will be saved. And then the witch's duty was to make sure that she's able to put everything in place, and then they lured it out with fish, and then there was pretend, or she was to pretend to be an entity that has possessed the tree and talking to that particular elf. So that was what they put in place, and it was actually working at the beginning. The creature was falling for it, and then two morticians were taken, but as usual, the creature caught on very quickly and then was about hurting the girl when the spirit of her grandmother was able to stop it just for a while, because it turned into a ball of fire and was going back to the graveside where the eldest mortician had stayed back because they were not finding that particular metal, while the slightly younger one had run away. So they bumped into each other. He and the witch bumped into each other, and they decided to go back and help the eldest mortician. The creature lands inside the grave. So, and it immediately goes after the eldest mortician. It holds him and is talking about how it will get a juicy liver to eat. Very sadistic things it was saying. And then it puts his hand into the man's stomach and removes it didn't remove his liver yet. Same with the wizard, but it had hurt him so bad. And then the witch and the other mortician luckily had brought horse's blood with them. So it was the horse's blood they had poured on the creature, which temporarily incapacitated the creature. So it fell down and left the old man bleeding. The two of them went to help the old man, and then the creature got up again, and this time it held the necks of both the witch and the other mortician, trying to strangle them to death. So while this old man was lying on the floor bleeding, he was now connecting the dots. And that they didn't actually have to find something in that particular soil that will unalive the creature, but even the weapons that they were using, they had to use the weapon mixed with blood in order to defeat the creature. So he now took the particular um, pickaxe he was using to dig, mixed with his blood, and then he uses it on the creature. So the creature was in pain, left the two, the witch and then the other mortician, to fall on to fall on the floor, and then the man kept on hacking and hacking at the creature and was finally able to unalive the creature. The eldest mortician then fell down and they had to rush him to the hospital. He was in critical condition. But we'll see that as days go by, he was okay. But the trauma was still following them. Some of them will be going about their normal work, and then they are seeing the creature. The wizard actually survived, also went back to his normal routine, and then they all were able to attend the eldest mortician's daughter's wedding, and they had a lovely time there. And this was a group photo they took. So thank you for staying with me. See you another time. Bye.